All right, the button has been pressed. The light has turned green, and we are all set and ready to go as we continue in Hindsight, our series of reviewing tabletop RPG books. Today, we're going to be talking about the next set of sort of player options for D&D 4th Ed, which primarily just means Player's Handbook 3 if we're really coming down to it. But before we get rolling, just want to do a little bit of quick housekeeping. It's been pointed out that people may not know when we actually stream, since we do mention it, but we don't really give times or anything like that. So I just want to say, if you ever want to catch In Hindsight live, we do this every Sunday morning at around 11 a.m. Pacific time. Sometimes a little later, sometimes a little earlier, depending on when we get set up. We also do our Paranormasight playthrough right now on Sound Goblin Story Time. Just after that, usually around 1 o'clock Pacific. And on Mondays, we stream about 7 o'clock Pacific, 7 p.m. Pacific, doing our Pokemon Monday streams. Right now, we're doing Pokemon Legends ZA. And on Thursdays, around 9 p.m. Pacific, right now, we're doing a playthrough of Yakuza 0, which just got started pretty recently. We're only 3 or 4 sessions into that. So we'll be playing through that for quite a while. But that's sort of our variety games time. We kind of switch back and forth between stuff that Krampus wants to play and stuff that Vince wants to do. Yep. So right now, it's going to be Yakuza 0. It's going to be Yakuza 0 for a while. And then whatever Vince wants to do after that, and then we'll be continuing the Yakuza series from there. So if you ever want to catch us live, that's when we're streaming on twitch.tv/SoundGoblinGaming. That being said, I am, as always, Bograt.
I'm Hunter Green.
And I'm Vincent.
And we'll go ahead and get started here with Player's Handbook 3, which may as well be called the Psionics Handbook.
More or less, yes. There's more to it than that.
There is, but it is where psionics is introduced, so they lean pretty heavily into it.
Yep. So, because I have no real experience with 4th Ed, I've got to ask, by that cover, does that mean they made a playable Minotaur race?
Playable Minotaurs have been a thing for long before 4th Ed.
Yeah.
Dragonlance.
Yeah, Dragonlance.
I had no idea about Dragonlance.
Yeah, but there was, even 3rd Ed had playable Minotaurs. They were just Crinian Minotaurs. They're actually medium-sized, and they're...
Oh. Yeah, they actually didn't even have level adjustment.
Yeah. They're just a player race.
Yeah. I guess. But yes, take 3 here. And now psionics. But again, that begs the question of what is psionics? It's, well, in D&D, it's a thingy that is different in every edition, so there's no mechanical through line. Whatever 4th edition wants to do, isn't actually going to be breaking from tradition, because there is no fucking tradition to break from.
There's some commonalities that happen across psionics, but not
a ton.
Not a ton, yeah.
Yeah. Like, for the original mechanics of psionics, they were trying desperately to make it be something different and separate from magic. Then with 3rd edition, they basically just kind of semi-gave up on that. With a lot of effects more or less duplicating spells because they already did anyways. But, yeah, and 4th edition, well, okay, since we mechanically threw out a great majority of how things worked previously, yeah, they just kind of have to rebuild things from scratch. And yeah, it does stuff differently in 4th. In any case, it does stuff differently than normal 4th edition in the sense that it instead of at-will encounter and daily powers, we don't have encounter powers here. We wouldn't want to go too crazy with breaking from the monoclass.
That being said, it is at least interesting that it is in some way different than all other classes, and that, with one exception, which I disagree with, and I'll talk about when we get to that class, all the classes that have the psionic power base actually do work this way. It is a thing that is actually like consistent to that power base, making psionics the only power base in the entirety of 4th Ed that actually has something that's consistent across all classes that use that power base.
Except one. Technically, there is Channel Divinity, which has something consistent across all of them except one as well. Yeah. Because there always has to be one different, I guess. But yeah, that's not all that's in this book, actually. There's also another take on multi-classing and a few other bits here and there. Speaking of which, we're going to start with some of the few other bits, the new races in this book that we'll go over real quick. Starting with Githzerai, the other Gith that no one remembers for some reason.
I'm going to say, most people know the Gith now if they didn't before.
Well, no. There's Githyanki and the Githzerai.
Yes. So in any case, after freeing themselves from their illithid rulers, the Gith, which consisted of both the Zerai and the Yonki, or rather, they were just called the Gith, they basically broke into 2 camps. The Githyanki, who decided to basically become the new bosses, the same as the old bosses, and the Githzerai, who went to the elemental chaos to meditate. Also, they just hate each other.
Yeah, so you're bringing up because of Baldur's Gate 3.
Correct.
All the ones in Baldur's Gate 3 are Githyanki. They're not actually Githzerai.
Oh.
Yeah.
There is a character from a D&D video game that is a Githzerai. Planescape Torment, there is Dakon. Dakon is a Githzerai.
Okay.
But no, all the Gith that are present in Baldur's Gate 3 are Githyanki. They serve their weird undead psychic lich queen.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Whereas the Githzerai are basically a monastic tradition. They actually, it's not really covered here, but when Vince mentioned that they went to the elemental chaos to meditate, but historically, obviously, going back to like second ed, they went to limbo. The thing is that the Githzerai are actually able to make form of the ever-changing plane of chaos limbo because they meditate so intensely and are basically able to structure their own minds so well. They basically can control limbo.
Okay, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. Also, this is the first time we see stat options appear in this edition. We've seen them before because I've been jumping around books when we did the player options beforehand. But yeah, where you get basically Githzerai have +2 to wisdom and then the choice of +2 to dexterity or intelligence, which helps with making classes a bit or gain your stats, gain the right stat bonuses for the class you're trying to make. But
Yeah, it's something we've discussed before. The idea of a lot of the times it's you pick either your race or your class version. Now you have to pick stuff that fits
Matches,
it.
yeah.
Whereas this, we've got you just increase your options for making a character you want to play.
Yeah, it's like there's still some limitations. Like obviously, if you're looking at a class whose primary ability is strength, this is still not necessarily the best choice. But you at least have a better chance of hitting a secondary in an instance like that, and also it does broaden the options because you can match up with more classes by having the one lock in and then an option for the second one, which again widens your class selection wildly if you're looking to sort of, I wouldn't even say min max, just to match up and make an effective character.
Yeah,
because fourth ed doesn't allow for min maxing. It's just really to be effective at all, you need to have the right stats.
Yeah,
it allows for min maxing and on a certain level requires it, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, the game's math assumes that you put like an 18 or you're starting with an 18 or 20 in your basic
primary
stat. Yeah. But yeah, and honestly, if you wanted to house roll, just you get a +2 to 2 different stats. Go fucking nuts. I don't think you'd break anything in this game, honestly.
Not even remotely.
No. Hey, guess. Minotaurs. Kind of a strange one, but not unwelcome, and takes a good advantage of 4th edition's divorcing of monster and player character rules. And as we kind of mentioned at the beginning, there was also technically the Dragonlance Minotaurs, which were just normal or medium-sized race that didn't even have level adjustment.
But these are pretty much kind of that too, because these are still medium-sized. They don't have huge stat modifiers because there were these stat modifiers for regular ass Minotaur in 3.5, and that was like a +8 strength or some ridiculous shit like that, and also had like a level adjustment. But then the Crinian Minotaurs were like more normal.
Some racial levels as well built in. Yeah. Or racial hit dice.
But yeah, this one is much more in line with the Crinian Minotaurs. They're the same size as regular characters. Obviously, they're going to be more in the vein of like a Goliath. They're on the larger end of medium, but they are still medium. And then they have just baseline +2 to strength and then +2 to con or wisdom.
Yeah, they're physically closer to the Dragonlance ones, but they're actually using for the more traditional D&D background for Minotaurs. But yeah, let's see. And Shardmind.
These things are cool as shit.
Yes, they are. Sending fragments of the living gate in the lattice of heaven that was used to seal off the far realm before it was destroyed. They're composed of hundreds of small crystals that emulate humanoid forms. They don't actually have a gender. They don't need to eat, drink, or sleep, though they have to sit in time out to recover powers and such, as do any other races that don't sleep, really.
Yeah.
Same thing with Warforged. Same thing with, I think Elves still trance in 4th ed.
Elves still trance.
Yeah, they're like, yes, you don't need to sleep. No, you don't get out of having to take long rests.
Yeah. And finally, Wilden. Totally a new race in 4th edition, except they're a complete copy and paste of Killarn from the 3.5 book rate. Wild, with a better name and a more obvious plant theme. Also completing the racial trilogy in this book of animal, vegetable, and mineral. Yeah, it's a that giveaway was actually the like encounter powers they have right there too.
Yeah, the Ancient's Destroyer and Hunter.
which is exactly what the Killorns have,
Uh-huh.
and it works kind of the same way as after every long rest, extended rest.
Pick one.
Yeah, you just pick one.
You go into that form, basically.
Which, granted, 90% of the time means you have the default one that you stay with, and then you never care about the other two. But that's a different matter entirely.
I mean, I will point out a very minor thing about the Wilden that I think is actually really cool and is actually a really good racial ability is Hardy Form, basically +1 to 1 defense of your choice.
Yeah.
You just get to pick Fort, Reflex, or Will and bolster it by 1, which means you can either A, based on what class or whatever you're going into, what your stat line is like, make something that's already good better, or bolster up something that's lacking a little bit because you didn't necessarily invest stats into it to get a good defense on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's not uncommon for there to be a defensive bonus in races, but I don't think any of them in here had them at least.
None of them in here had them, and most of the time it's like it's to a specific one.
Yeah.
It's not your choice like that.
Yep. All right, and now what is the bulk of these books? The character classes, which will require an extra slide at the beginning here because I have to talk about PowerPoints now. So, 3 of the 4 psionic classes don't have encounter powers. Instead, they get an extra at-will power at 3. Get to replace their older at-will powers with different ones at technically at all levels. They would have normally gained encounter powers. They also just gained 2 power points at 21. And they get a growing pool of power points, which replenish on a short rest. All their at-will powers can be augmented by spending power points. You can only do 1 augment, and whatever line is under that augment completely replaces the non-augmented version of it. So if like Energizing Spike over there, for example, if you use the 1 power point augment, that's the hit effect.
Yeah, it does that instead. It doesn't do both. It just does whatever you've augmented it to.
Yeah, and you can't do both of them. You can only do one of them.
Makes sense.
So costs are fixed based on the tier of the at-will power. So if you got it in the heroic tier, it's going to be 1 for, it's going to augment for 1 or 2, and Paragon's going to augment for 1 or 4, and Epic is going to augment for 2 or 6. And all of their Paragon paths still give them an encounter power as usual. The only commonality is psionic Paragon paths will also just give you 2 power points. But beyond that, they basically stick to the traditional Paragon path things of there's a few trinkety abilities and counter power and some other stuff as a level.
So historically, PowerPoints have been the way that psionics worked. Again, 3.035 kind of changed it to just be spell casting with a different brush plate over it.
Yeah, but it still use PowerPoints.
It did still use PowerPoints. But back in second, when psionics first kind of got introduced, this was how psionic powers worked. You had your PowerPoints pool. Every power costs a certain number of points. You could get more out of them by pumping more points into them, et cetera, et cetera. It was actually the sort of alternative because obviously, we went with, D&D traditionally had Vancian spellcasting where just you have X number of spells at X level. And PowerPoints were effectively the equivalent of like an MP-based system rather than a Vancian system where it was like, you have access to all of these powers and depending upon how much, PP you pump into them, they have a baseline cost and then you can pump more into them to get more effect.
Effectively letting you change how the power operated sometimes in radically different ways. It also had the advantage of psionics didn't have to reinvent the wheel several times over like they had to do with spells in 3.5.
Yeah.
Where you had cure light wounds, cure moderate wounds, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like, no, you just need one of these.
There were also fluff reasons for this, which we will go into if we ever talk about Dark Sun. But
yeah.
Which is pretty much where psionics kind of originates in D&D.
It's the major psionics.
Yeah,
it existed before.
Yeah, it did exist before it, but nobody really cared about it until Dark Sun, where it was a major factor in the actual setting.
Yeah. All right, and starting with the first class, Ardent, the psionic mantle using class from complete
psionic paladin.
I was going to say that's a paladin.
Ish.
Paladin cleric kind of thing.
Yeah, it's somewhere between the two. But yeah, it is reinterpreted as a fourth edition leader, and it's also a fourth PowerPoint using class, which considering it was it was the rough cleric equivalent, kind of makes sense. Primary stat is charisma, secondary stat is constitution for elation or wisdom for clarity. I don't remember whether I mentioned this on Yeah, I did mention on this slide. So the usual secondary stat choices here, both of which interact with opportunity attacks, give your allies bonuses, certain skills. You're not your own ally in 4th edition, by the way.
Yeah, so you cannot give the bonus to yourself. It actually has to be another character.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
Now, technically, if you have like summons on the field and stuff like that, those are allies. But
Yeah.
Also makes sense.
Yeah. Whether or not you are your own ally, by the way, is not a very common convention in RPGs or any other games for that matter. So don't just assume when it says ally that you are or aren't your own ally for any game you're playing. In particular, you will probably have to look this up at one point or another.
yeah, you pretty much always want to check and make sure you understand that for the system you are playing, because it can make powers, but it can make abilities wildly more or less powerful depending upon whether or not you are considered your own ally.
Yeah. You may well have. I'm pretty sure you were considered your own ally in 3rd edition.
You are.
That even, yeah,
Yeah.
Make that even weirder. But yeah. It also grants a counter power that triggers when an attack bloodies you, but unlike all the classes in Player's Handbook 2, yeah, no power for any PowerPoint using class ever cares directly about your choice. There's not going to be a sub thing listed for choosing Mantle of Clarity or Mantle of Elation. They will still use one. Yeah, there are still powers that will use one secondary stat or another, but they're not directly keyed to your choice of mantle.
Yeah, the only thing you might notice is something like First Aid, for instance, Ardent Surge does care, but in the sense that there is one for each of them, not that it's, oh, if you picked this mantle, you want to take this power.
Yeah.
It's like it has an extra effect, whichever mantle you have.
Yeah. And it should be noted that when they do add more mantle choices, those mantle choices themselves do other things with Ardent Surge, so you're not screwed over either. It's just the mantle basically affects what Ardent Surge does, which is their standard leader power.
It affects what Ardent Surge does, and it gives you one encounter power basically. That is tied to that mantle, but it again doesn't actually technically have an effect based on that mantle. It's just that's how you get that power.
Yeah,
I like that power design over what we've seen before of which path you picked. You should pick these powers instead of other powers.
It's also more expandable because if you create when they create another secondary stat choice, if it happens to be the same secondary stat, it means that all the powers previously that had that keyword on it are
less worth.
Than the new ones they have to make for that choice.
Yeah, basically every time they add more expanded options to a given class, it makes any power that's tied to a specific choice less and less useful. Because like at baseline, it's like you have two options. Basically, everything's kind of a 50-50. It's either you go with this one or you go with that one. But as soon as you add another two, all of a sudden it's a 25% effectiveness, because like, did you make this one choice out of 4? If you get up to 6 options, suddenly it's like it's not even fucking worth it. This is virtually a useless ability unless you happen to be in that one very specific lane.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. As far as Ardent powers themselves, so all attack powers for Ardent are melee weapon oriented. Wisdom powers tend to be more defensive in nature, while Constitution powers tend to be offensive. There are exceptions to that, however. So your secondary stat choice doesn't necessarily completely lock you into one thing or another. PowerPoints are more viable at higher levels. PowerPoint powers are more viable at higher levels, with some like Iron Strike not getting a good replacement for it, leading to the limitation of 3 at-will powers being both a painful one and one that can lead to kind of repetitive play styles. In other words, just because you can replace powers doesn't mean you're necessarily going to, especially when you're doing something that isn't like when you're not actually doing a striker, and the secondary effects that you're doing are much more worthwhile, especially considering the fact that, when you're paying just, it only costs like 2 to augment and you have like 12 PowerPoints, you get a lot of mileage out of it.
Look, just because I have 18 abilities as a paladin doesn't mean I'm going to use anything other than 3. Wow joke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a WoW joke, but also, for being totally honest, it's also pretty much how 4th Ed actually works most of the time. 90% of your turns are using an at-will power, because you basically blow through all of your encounter and daily powers first, and then you just do nothing but at-will powers until the combat is over.
Yeah.
Depending on how many combats you plan on having in that day, depends on how many of your daily
powers
you
you
can
use in a given one, but
you're still going to blow through all of your encounter powers
first,
and then
yeah.
go to using all of your at wills.
Which does make the psionic build a little bit more interesting because it's more variable. You do get your power points back every encounter.
Yeah.
Meaning that you're more willing to just kind of blow them, but you at least have more variability in what you're doing because it's not like, oh, I have one encounter power, I'm going to use that one encounter power. It is every single one of my at will powers has options I can do based on my power points.
Yep.
Which is just a more interesting way because it does mean you have more choices even for those first few rounds wherein it's like, okay, I'm going to blow through all my power points at the beginning, but at least it's not always going to be the same thing. Turn 1 is going to be this ability, turn 2 is going to be this ability, turn 3 is going to be this ability, and then it's going to be at wills for the rest of it. It is quite literally like, okay, what's the situation we're in? Which of my like 3 at wills is going to be best for this with an augment?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's still not great. It's still not actually interesting character design.
It's
You know, as far as abilities, but it at least has somewhat more variance than most other classes.
Yeah, I do feel it is hampered by their inherent caution when it comes to power of anything and everything in the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because okay, quite frankly, I think it's partially a product of the era because they can only do internal playtesting. There wasn't really any. The internet was kind of in its infancy. It was still there, but it wasn't.
It wasn't the way it is now, where they can literally just like throw out an unearthed arcana, be like, "Hey, give us feedback on this," and get hundreds of thousands of people testing it.
Yeah. So I think the limit of three at will powers was too much. Honestly,
Yeah.
I believe they could have, instead of replacing powers, just pick a new one.
But like I said, not great, but
Yeah.
at least more interesting and more varied than most classes end up being.
At least it is not literally the same system that everyone else is using for every other class. So there's that's a positive.
Yeah.
Let's see. In any case, daily powers have long-term effects attached to them, and utility powers are standard leader, basically. Yeah, the ardent more or less does what you think a psionic leader. All right, and moving on to our next class, the Battle Mind, the Defender PowerPoint class.
The other psionic paladin.
Yep.
That man has a very flat head.
No, he doesn't. It's hidden by the ring.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
okay.
can
It
see
actually
the
goes
curve
just a little bit
just
over it.
above the ring.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see it. I see it.
Yep. In any case, primary Constitution, secondary Wisdom for resilience, or Charisma for thought. Battlemind class features: you get 3 at wills that help you tank, and 1 encounter power based on your secondary stat choice. Their tanking is mechanically on the weaker side as a base ability, requiring one of their power points if you want to stick more than one target to yourselves. Your retaliatory ability, which is also an immediate action, is only usable against something in melee. And overall, yeah, their class features end up on the weak side. By the way, this is my favorite class in this book because all the design creativity of this class went into its powers. Battlemind has secondary roles of controller and striker listed, and that actually comes across a lot more in their powers than you do with any other class. You have like legitimate AoE attacks as well as the usual debuffs, powers that can be augmented to use as an attack of opportunity that have debuff riders on them on a hit, which is more useful than just doing damage when something tries to move away from you, because to some point it just doesn't fucking care. But when you make it so, oh, you tried to move away from me, okay, now you're slowed, fuck you. That's actually works a lot better for tanking, as well as the occasional immediate action power, something that is heavily missing. Lightning Rush, I've been trying to roughly get some feel for optimization when it comes to and what people actually do when they play this game. At best, as an amateur, and take this with a bit of a grain of salt, Lightning Rush is considered one of the best powers in the game, because this is an immediate interrupt that you can just use off turn. It only costs 2 augment to basically make it so, okay, you tried to attack my guy, I'm going to walk over here and smack you in the face, and now you're hitting me. It's a great tanking power that has nothing to do with any of their actual tanking abilities.
Yeah, and you're getting it at level 7, which also means that like by that point, 2 power points is fucking nothing.
Yes. Also, Brutal Barrage right there. I took
The
one
funniest
look.
power in the game.
The funniest power in the game. I took one look at this and went, this is a tanking class, right?
Brutal Barrage, otherwise known as Bam Bam, Bam Bam Bam, Bam Bam, Bam 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 Bam.
Yeah, so make 3 attacks. That's just a base. Make 3 attacks. It only does your stat modifier and damage. However, you are still using your weapon, so it's going to use every single thing that adds to that. Oh, by the way, if you hit like twice or more, it knocks them down, but that's a moot point.
Also, spend 1 power point. Attack 4 times. Spend 4 power points, attack 4 times, and get Constitution and Charisma damage.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Now, if
It is like even the description of it says it is. I'm going to drive this enemy into the ground like a fucking tent stake.
yeah, if optimized for its DPS, actually does get up into the striker levels of damage.
Yes.
Now, mind you, you're optimizing for that as a tanking class, so that's not the best of features at times.
Except, I mean, you're a Constitution primary tanking class anyways, and the
Yeah.
Constitution is the primary on it. So it's like, oh no, I have more HP and this hits harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Come on, man.
Like, I don't see the
You also
downside
feel-
of that.
You also, more than the other classes, feel the fact that you only have 3 at-will powers, because
Yes.
a lot of their at-will
You
powers
want all of them.
Yeah. There's one I didn't put on here because there was no duplicate at an earlier level, but there is a minor action one at level 27, which is usable only if you missed with your primary attack and is just another attack. It was like every piece of originality within this system somehow went into this one fucking class, and it's like, I really wish you used this more on the other classes.
Oh, by the way, real quick one. The chat box on the OBS isn't loading properly. If somebody could just have chat up like on their phone in case we get chatters.
Yeah.
I just now noticed that.
I don't know
Twitch
why
breaks
my mic-
occasionally.
Like, I don't have Twitch on my phone, so I don't know why I was bringing it up.
But yeah. Beyond that, each level has a daily power aspect polymorph that adds an additional augmentation to your at-will power, though all but one of those scale with wisdom, and you have more conventional choices as well. Utility powers are more traditional tanking and movement-oriented things. This class is actually very good at moving as well. If you couldn't tell by Lightning Rush, which also just, as part of the effect, moves you up to whatever you're about to smack.
Yep.
Its biggest weakness is opportunity attacks are basic melee attacks, which means it will use strength normally. So unless you've taken a feat, you're
because you have no reason to go into strength otherwise.
Yeah. So enemies run intelligently. One of the better things they can do is just walk away from you, even if they're marked. All right, moving on to the next one. Scion. We technically skipped over a class. We'll get back to it.
Psionic Wizard.
Yep. Iconic Psionic class and a controller. It's much like 4th edition. Yeah.
It's Wizard, but Psionic.
Yeah, it's Wizard, but Psionic. Yep.
Always has been, always will be.
Yep. Primary stat is intelligence. Secondary stats are either charisma or wisdom. There is no actual secondary stat choice. You choose which 2 encounter powers you want. They aren't tied to a secondary stat. That's it. One of the powers that you'll get will be a combat thing, and one of the powers is a ribbon / out of combat utility of one sort or another. Yeah. They're both minor effects, regardless. As for Scion powers, pretty much what you'd expect from a controller with power points. Charisma powers tend to be buffs and debuffs, while wisdom ones are damage penalties and force movement oriented. Since effect is more important than damage to a controller, Dishearten and Mind Thrust are probably a couple of their best at-will powers, thanks to them handing out effectively large debuffs to a bunch of attacks or a single enemy's defenses at higher levels for a ridiculously small resource cost. Daily encounter powers are also standard fare for controllers. Yeah. So once you get into like epic levels and your charisma modifier is something like a 7, giving everything in a AoE -7 to hit. Like, yeah, I don't fucking care. It's doing subpar damage. This cost me 2 power points of my like 15. Who cares? I can do this for a good chunk of the combat.
to all their defense.
Yeah, or -7 to
-7 to hit, -7 to all their defenses.
Yeah.
You deal 2d8 plus int modifier of psychic damage, and then they gain vulnerability to psychic damage equal to 5 plus charisma modifier until the end of your next turn, meaning the next time you hit them real fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no. And again, as a reminder, 2 PowerPoint costs, 4 PowerPoint costs, very rapidly become fuck all.
Yeah. Yeah, the system is built around more or less the idea that the maximum amount of power points you're spending will come out to about the same as using 3 encounter powers. But the fact that you actually have the ability to moderate and have like these middle ground abilities.
Well, and it doesn't account for the fact that sometimes the lower level powers that are augment 1/2 are just honestly better than some of the ones that are like 2/6.
Yes, they are.
So yeah, if it's designed around like, oh yeah, you can get like 2 or 3 uses of an augment 6. Like that's great. I've still got this power that's an augment 2. I can just use this the whole fucking combat, man.
Yeah,
Yep.
Let's
basically.
go.
Yeah. Yeah, just mind thrusting against a solo encounter the whole time is basically like, okay, if I hit, no one else is missing.
Yep.
All right. Monk, the final psionic class.
For some reason.
Yep. For some reason, this is a psionic class. The striker one, the only one that doesn't use power points, so I can't talk about this power source in generalities because they like to annoy me. I don't know. On the other hand, it does more than one, more than a few unique things, having its own unique focus, second parts, the key focus, as well as being able to use all weapons it has proficiency with as a focus, just because. Its primary stat is dexterity. Secondary stats are strength for stone fist or wisdom for center breath. So basically, they're class features. Your secondary stat choice also gives you a plus tiered the opposite defense as well as your striker damage ability, which is a once per round free action that automatically does a flat number plus secondary stat to an escalating number of adjacent targets. It starts at 1 and eventually goes to all at epic tier. With an added effects if you're using the damage on something that wasn't the target of the attack that triggered it.
To explain a little bit, because just saying plus tier to the opposite defense may not be exactly clear. What that means is centered breath, which is the wisdom one. You're already going to have a good wisdom, meaning you're going to get a good will. It gives you a bonus to fortitude. Stone fist, being the strength one, means you're already going to have a good fortitude. It gives you a bonus to will.
Yeah, and they're primary dex, so they're going to have a good
reflex regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it basically kind of helps even out their saves a little bit, which again is a thing that's pretty common across the board for Monk. Excepting second ed, where Monk was just bad and a trap option as a whole.
Well,
that was
good
yeah,
saves.
yeah. 3035 monks just have good saves, and this is kind of how they replicate that in this one, since there's not actually like flat save bonuses for most classes.
Yeah. Let's see. They also get unarmed strike that lets them make melee basic attacks unarmed and is enhanced by your key focus. It does not by default use dex, however, for reasons. So unless you take a feat to change it, it's not going to. It's not really going to come up per se in a weird way. But yeah, they also get a +2 defense while they're unarmored ish. This edition is very heavily into its own magic items, so cloth armor is technically considered unarmored.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't
it's
provide
still
an AC
enchanted.
bonus, but you can have enchantments on it just
Yeah.
the same.
And finally, all of their at-will and encounter powers are full discipline powers, which come with movement actions. But you can only use actions from a single full discipline power on your turn. So you can't use the movement action of like Dancing Cobra and the attack action of something else. Yeah.
You can use a non-full discipline action, so you can use the movement power off of a discipline action and then a non-full discipline attack action, for instance. But
yeah, so if you're using one of your daily powers, you could use
Yeah.
the movement power, movement action of anything else because none of your daily powers are full discipline.
Yeah.
But yeah, monk powers themselves. All powers are implement powers that target non-AC defenses. Their powers are all about damage and movement with a good amount of multi-target damage, including in their striker ability. Once you hit Paragon tier, it's 2 targets. Daily powers are never full discipline, mean that you can use your at-will or encounter movement powers, as we mentioned before. It's kind of a waste to do with an encounter power, because that will use up the encounter power if you use the movement on it. But the movement abilities on the at-will powers are fairly good anyways. There are a smattering of stances among their daily and utility powers, as well as more standard fare stuff. Yeah, they're pretty straightforward. I don't actually hate this class. The fact that it's psionic is stupid, but at least it's doing something different.
The thing that makes me slightly confused Okay, so it's in the Psionic book where they have a whole PowerPoint.
Well, it's not technically in the Sonic book. It's
Well,
in Player's Handbook 3.
It's with a lot of the other Psionic stuff. It has. Monk has had key points.
Yes, Monk has
for
had
the
key
longest
points.
time.
Yes.
They are the class that, out of like everything in 3.5 that wasn't psionic, was the only other one that had a pool of points used to fuel its powers.
Well, they didn't have key in 3.5 per se. They just almost duct tape key to them
Yes.
over time
Yes.
as they started to
Like,
okay,
you
you can
use-
spend your stunning fist
Fist
to
to
do
do other
X,
stuff.
Y, and Z.
Yeah,
But
they already had a pool of resource to
Resources.
spend to get effect on their abilities. It just
They
makes
were
no
the
sense.
base class that was semi PowerPoint based.
It-
And they didn't do it here.
It is one of two things. Either A, don't fucking make them psionic because there's no real reason why they should be. They're a fucking martial class. They fucking punch things. Or make them psionic and just give them fucking power points and make them work like every other psionic class.
Call them
Yeah.
key points if you want to, but they should still work the same way. If you really want Psionic Monk, Soul Knife's right there.
Yeah, you need a psionic striker. Just make the soul knife.
No, they refused to actually make a psionic striker. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They basically made a psionic, certainly not martial striker.
Well, it can't be martial, Vince. It has a focus.
Yeah. Key focus.
No, I think he's talking about
Except
the
none
other
of the
class.
psionic ones.
Yeah, I know.
have it.
I know. I'm aware.
It's like the key focus is unique to them for now. Technically, there are other classes that use it. We will talk about them next week.
It's like you took the class that basically had PowerPoints already and didn't give it PowerPoints.
Yeah.
Next to all the PowerPoint.
Well, yeah, they would have had to try and figure out how to make a striker class that uses PowerPoints, and I don't know.
The same
This wouldn't
way-
be hard. The
No,
same way all the other ones
no,
do.
it really wouldn't.
Hey, look, I spent some PowerPoints. I do like 4 weapon dice now.
Yeah.
I hit an extra target. This isn't complicated.
You've lost me already.
It's Striker. It just does damage.
Well, here's the thing: like Striker doesn't, their abilities don't really like scale up damage wise any more than anyone else's do, with the exception of Barbarian, because they baked the extra Striker damage into the class.
Yeah.
Their extra damage actually comes from their class abilities.
Yeah.
Like just like Monk's extra damage is coming from flurry of blows.
Uh-huh.
That's other than that, these are just doing the same amount of damage that non-striker classes do.
Yep.
It's just what riders you get depends on what class you are, etc., and
Yeah.
how they flavored that out. But it all basically works the same. It's and it doesn't really come out any different for any of the like PowerPoint using classes either per se.
No.
So it's like
It's like just let them give them key points, spend some points to augment their abilities.
yeah,
This isn't complicated.
no, it's you could take literally like Battle Mind, shift out a few powers, and just give him a class feature that's damage. That's all you need to do.
And
Yeah.
Striker. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It's like, also, let's be real here. Battle Mind exists. You don't fucking need a psionic striker. You have one.
kind of do, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, remember.
Yep, Rune Priest.
Yep.
Divine Leader mode switching class that likes the word rune a little too much. Primary stat is Strength. Secondary stats are Constitution for Hammer or Wisdom for Defiant. So, class features. Main unique thing about this class is runic powers. All at-will and encounter powers this class have, including its leader healing power, are tagged as runic. Meaning you choose destruction or protection whenever you use that power. And those extra effects are added to that power, as well as activating a minor attack or resistant buff or nearby allies. So basically, if you used Rune of Mending here, when you use it, you either choose destruction or protection. You would get that effect would go off with that ability, and as soon as you choose that, you'll either have Rune of Protection or Rune of Destruction going constantly until you use another power and
choose
that
the other one.
Other one. Yeah, where protection will give everyone near you a resistance to damage, and destruction gives everyone a bonus to hit that are next to you.
It's actually really cool, and honestly makes me really wonder why they didn't like do this for base classes to give them fucking anything interesting to do with their time.
One of the few times we were looking at 4th edition. Rune Priest of the classes early.
Yeah, no, I realize I have one entire complaint about this class, and it is a minor gripe. I do actually like it otherwise.
Yeah.
They don't have Channel Divinity.
No.
They're the only divine class that doesn't have channel divinity. But yeah, secondary stat ability is a bonus to damage rolls against a target, either for hitting or missing you. That's tied to the stat. But like the psionic classes in this book, there's no hard coded bonuses for your secondary stat choice. As for Rune Priest powers themselves, as stated before, all at-will and encounter powers are runic, effectively making them two different powers in one, with the destruction options being offensive, while the protection ones are defensive. In addition, all four at-will powers in this book are keyed to secondary stats, effectively giving you real choices for at-will powers initially. I'm not sure if ever there were probably more powers printed in Dragon magazines. There are no other books where Rune Priest
Good
appears.
stuff. I will say this much too. One of the interesting things about it, because of the way Rune of Destruction and Rune of Protection works, it does also notably make Rune Priest, I believe, the only class in the entirety of Fourth Ed that has at-will powers that have ongoing effects, effectively.
Yeah, kind of.
Because by choosing which rune you do, you trigger the ongoing effect of having that rune active. I don't think there's any other classes that have at-wills that have ongoing. At most, they might have one that lasts until like the next turn.
There's plenty of them that last until the next turn, in controllers especially.
But I don't think there are any
there's
that are
nothing
just
that's
like it's just a constant effect
Yeah.
until you change it.
Yeah, it's effectively switching from one order to another. But yeah,
And although although the at wills are keyed to a secondary stat each, at least they do have basically two effects on each of them.
yeah.
So you have a bit more. Like even though you're basically only picking two because you're going to match up your secondary stat.
Yeah.
You at least still get effectively four.
Yeah, you
different
have
things
you still
that
have
can do.
options.
Yeah, you effectively get double the options from everything,
Everything.
from all your at-wills and encounters. Daily and utility powers are what you would usually expect from leader classes. They're standard fare stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, Seeker. Range weapon using controller class that has a primal power source because they refuse to make a martial controller and are therefore cowards. Primary stat here is wisdom. Secondary stats are strength for spirit bond or dexterity for blood bond.
We had to make Seeker because we wanted Ranger to continue to feel inadequate using a bow.
Yep.
Also, does power source ever matter?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay. It matters for feats.
There are a handful of feats that are you have to have XYZ power source. But even then, it's
So
like,
it's like on one hand, yeah, they haven't made a power controller, but on the other hand, it doesn't fucking matter.
Not really.
but it's like power source matters for a certain number of feats. Of the feats where power source matters, Martial is probably the weakest pool of them.
Like most controllers, Seekers only have a few class features. In this case, a free action basic range attack and counter power usable after you miss one target against another within 5 squares of the original target. And your choice of secondary stat package are the ability to shift as a minor action and an encounter AoE push away from yourself, or a bonus to hit with thrown weapons. Auto returning on those thrown weapons, strength to AC instead of dex, and an encounter or power that auto hits for weapon damage plus strength versus something that missed you immediately. Basically, they choose between I'm going to use bows or I'm going to use thrown weapons.
Yeah.
Mind you, I will say, Strength Seeker is actually very interesting, if nothing else, because strength to AC makes them really tanky for a controller.
Yeah. I mean, the other one, Dex, is the secondary, so they're both their secondaries adding to AC regardless.
Yeah.
One way or another. Just if you're
It's just if you're doing the Dex one, you're much more of a you're much more interested in staying at long range, whereas the thrown one tends to be a little bit closer, not necessarily in melee, but at least
But it's also not going to mind me.
No.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm throwing an axe at you, I can hit you when you're next to me as well.
yeah.
Range attacks still provoke attacks of opportunity.
Yeah, but
Still
just do like melee
yeah.
attacks at that point.
Yeah.
You know,
Let's see. Seeker powers 3 of your 5. But that is the other thing. There are actual ones that are like Guardian Harrier. There, for example, is a melee or ranged power, so they actually do have.
There's that, and also the other factor being is that if you're strength based, basic attack actions are actually still pretty okay.
Yeah.
If you have no other option to do, you can use a basic attack action. You're strength based; it's still going to have a good hit and damage roll.
like you're not if you're doing the strength one, you have Guardian Harrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, at will power, you already have a melee attack.
Yep.
And speaking of, 3 of your 5 at will powers, as well as some of your encounter powers, are usable as ranged basic attacks. This is really important because if we go back to that previous page and look at inevitable shot, it gives you a ranged basic attack, which if you, especially if you're not dex based, this could be an issue. Otherwise, yeah. The class itself is a bit spartan on proper burst AoEs, but will often do various things to mess with enemies adjacent to targets. A good deal of the abilities also come with a proper control style debuffs, and like knocking prone and daze. All utility powers are combat oriented with the occasional stance. And okay, honestly, this is. I would probably say this is the weakest class I've looked at of all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing that it's a good class. I just think it's interesting having a strength-based controller.
Yeah. Well, okay, it's a strength
Strength secondary controller, but it
yeah.
just makes it makes it so it is interestingly a controller that is decently viable in melee and still, and because they get strength to AC means they're also not going to fucking explode if they're in melee. Especially you get stuff like Cloak of Quills where it's like, oh, something hit me with an attack of opportunity, take strength damage, bitch.
Yeah. All right. And we are finally done with classes. So, on to hybrid characters. Multi-classing number 2. The idea is to reduce all classes to half classes and let players recombine the 2 halves to make a full class. Except this is 4th edition, so everything is overcautious, and the half classes come out to less than half, which isn't helped by the rigid stat enforcement and over nerfing of class abilities, making the whole thing come out to less than half for each part. But start with how this works. So you get everything listed in the class traits except for armor proficiency, which you only get if it appears on both lists for reasons. You get 3 training skills chosen from the class skills of either class, and some classes also give you an extra skill. So, like Bard, for example,
the
gives
high
you an
skill
extra
classes
skill.
get
Yeah.
skill.
You also gain a smattering of class features from each class, with no guarantee that you'll get the secondary stat class feature, rendering a lot of powers in that class subpar. Speaking of powers, you have to always have 1 at will, 1 encounter, and 1 daily power from each class, unless you took the a psionic class, in which case one of your encounter slots gives you PowerPoint pool. Another gives you an additional at will power from augmenting class, and the rest of the levels let you replace either as usual. Your PowerPoints are determined by how many and what level of augmental powers you have. Oddly enough, it makes human as is actually a very good choice for psionics, simply because it just gives you 1 more at will power.
Mhm.
Here it will also just give you extra power points, because if you for every augmentable at will power you have, it gives you an amount of power points depending on what level that power is. If you're doing the hybrid one, if you're doing the normal one, you just get power points as normal. If you're using
gives you power.
if you're using 2 hybrid classes that are both psionic PowerPoint using classes, for some reason because you hate yourself, none of those classes have the same primary stat. Yeah. All right. So the guardrails. Not only do the hybrid classes come with about half the class features, all of the primary jobs are nerfed in some way. Leaders get a single use of their healing ability per half, never gain the 3rd use. Striker damage abilities only work on that class's specific powers, and tank abilities are just flatly nerfed in various ways, effectively segregating the 2 half classes from themselves and making them underperform, even when your 2 halves of the same role, with maybe the exception of controller, because controller's class features are practically fucking non-existent anyways. You are just basically
You can't nerf something that doesn't exist.
exactly. But yeah. And my thoughts here: this system is neat as hell, but the fine tradition of 4th ed, the idea is undermined by the overly large levels of caution. Class feature nerfs are probably go too far in some areas, locking out of some of the classes from the secondary stat choices that make some powers functional without wasting the feat that you can only take once, twice. Use a Paragon path for it doesn't help. But the biggest issue is the base stat system and how it's rigidly enforced in 4th edition, which you could have loosened for this system specifically. Letting the player pick their own primary and secondary stat for both classes would have opened up a variety and made it easier for non-optimizers to make a fun and effective characters with this. Instead, this is pretty much limited to people who are getting overly in the grain or overly in the weeds in order to try and figure out what actually fucking works here.
Really just like Let them pick a power from whatever. Let them pick 2 classes and just pick their powers from both of them, however the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And you get an encounter power, just pick one from one of your classes.
Yeah, like my view on it is
It
like,
might be a little bit more powerful than just the base class, but who the fuck cares?
well, and I do agree that this is underpowered and not great because fourth ed is so extremely overcautious. But of the 2 available options for multiclassing, I do think hybrid is the better one because the
Oh, yes, it
multiclass
is.
feats are just fucking boring. It's basically
Oh, yeah.
you get 1 power from the class that you multiclass into.
Yeah.
No, definitely better than the other one. This is like
It may like the
this is
multiclass
like
feats may as well.
pseudo-gestalt, but not done well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the multiclass feats may as well just be pick a power from a class that isn't your own.
Yeah.
Because that's basically all they really amount to. Whereas
Yeah.
this one, at least, you actually still get the options as you progress. You get the higher level options. Like, again, not great. They did definitely put the guardrails on too hard to be like, oh, we don't want it to become overpowered and character optimized. And it's like, your system is already bland and sucks. What do you care?
Like everyone already works the same. Like literally, what I would just do is be like, okay, you at the start of character creation, you pick 2 classes, get the base ability of both those classes, and anytime you would get a power,
You pick
pick
from one
one
of the
from
classes.
one of your 2 classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Rather than always having to have an even number between the 2. And
There's not a problem with this. Every ability
No.
works the same. This doesn't break anything.
yeah.
The stats ones is actually really my major thing on that. 'cause,
Yes,
like,
that too. Because
yeah.
being able to be like, yeah, my primary class, I'm going to make a hybrid like fighter wizard, but wizard doesn't really overlap with fighter. It's like now I've got a strength and int and whatever. Like I think there's a secondary because I think wizard has a dex secondary.
Okay, so Wizard
like-
has tertiaries.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
They are int.
But my point is, let's say like I've got a strength primary and an int primary and then like a dex overlap. It's like, okay, now I have 3 stats I have to worry about, which the system really doesn't support.
No, it doesn't at all.
But a lot of multi or really out there combination.
Yeah, but a lot of multi-classing stuff is in systems where classes fucking work differently.
True.
Yeah.
I will give you that. Like you could easily
Here, it's like, what the fuck does it matter if I just copy-paste everything out of fucking Wizard and where it says intelligence, say strength?
Yeah.
It doesn't. It doesn't fucking matter.
The Muscle Wizard.
Like
say,
realistically,
let me
I
be
would
the
just
muscle
try
one.
and do classes.
I mean, there is a strength sorcerer, I think. Or no, con sorcerer. Con sorcerer is the
yeah, they're
stupid one.
I would try and do classes that basically end up being like the primary for this class is also the secondary for this class, and the secondary for this class is also the primary for this class.
And you can, but I think the
like,
thing that
complete multi-classes would be cute too.
well, and I think the thing that Vince was pointing out though is like, yes, you and I would do that because we're pretty good at character creation and reading those things.
Yeah.
Again, always trying to come from the view of somebody who this is their first tabletop RPG.
Don't play that.
This is a fucking trap option. This
Yes.
is 100% a trap option where they're like, oh, that sounds really cool. I want to be these 2 classes. And it's like, those 2 classes don't work together at all. I want to be these 2 classes. Why does my character suck ass?
Why can't I hit anything? My 14s across the board aren't working.
Yeah, go figure.
I do also like how they kind of inherently acknowledge it with the little group building section, where it's like, when you're adding a hybrid character to an adventuring group, it's probably best if at least one, if not both of the roles normally filled by your 2 classes are also filled by another character in the group, because you suck at both of them. We made you bad on purpose. How dare you want a multi-class?
Yeah.
My first D&D character ever in 3.0 was a half-elf fighter sorcerer at level 3. I fucked up. But at the same time, I was new to it and learning.
Yeah.
This seems worse than that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right.
At least in that instance, you could just be like, oh, well, I fucked up. I'm going to just completely stop leveling one of those 2 classes
Yeah.
and just focus on being the other and just accept that, like, I lost a level. Here, it's like, no, you're locked in.
Yeah.
You are both these things for the entirety of that character.
Yeah. All right. Character options. And by that, I mean, we're skill powers are here. So alternate utility powers that you can take if you have training in a skill. And you can get one by taking the skill power feat only once. It's not a feat you can repeat, unfortunately. This should have been how utility powers were by default, honestly. Instead of it being a class-based thing, actually just tying them to the skills you actually have trained in would have been much more interesting. But yeah. With a further segregation of non-combat and combat skills, as it would make the choice of skills feel more impactful as well, but that's a different matter entirely. Also, classes would be a bit more readable if you didn't have, if you took out large sections of their powers where all the utility powers were, and just threw that into a different part of the book. It would condense those sections greatly. This is also a good example of one thing that fourth edition actually does well, which is the fantastically mundane. The feats of skill and parallel that parallels magic by bending the edges of possible to produce the physically, mentally, or socially amazing without having to roll insane on dice or exercise your skill in DM negotiations until the game breaks. Basically, just being able to do things that actually feel kind of special and neat without it literally being fucking magic. Uh, those abilities that they don't really imagine all that often for like the martial or skill based characters. They kind of, because of the Sisyphean chore of how they designed classes, and they had to design 1.5 billion fucking powers for everything.
Yeah,
they accidental into actually using a good amount of their imagination to come up with this stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. This is also sort of the second instance where we've seen something along those lines too, because they also did have the martial practices, which are essentially rituals for non-casters.
Yes.
It does feel like they made a decent effort to try and balance things out. Probably because they saw the reactions to Book of Nine Swords
Book of Nine
from
Swords,
both sides.
Yes, and Book of Nine Swords was actually it did have influence on fourth edition. I know that. What exactly it was, I have no idea, but I know it did have influence on fourth edition. Uh, all right. Psionic power, because there is technically this book. We're really over here for one quick thing, because otherwise, it's exactly what you would think it would be. It's just more options,
More character options for the psionic classes.
But there was
Monks still don't get PowerPoints.
Yeah, monks still don't get PowerPoints. But yeah, in here are bloodline feats, which are akin to heritage feats of 3-5, with then entry feat, which that should be taken at level 1 from what they say. No strict limit on that though. And each of the 2 bloodlines in this book have 5, 3, and 2 feats of each of the respective tiers. So there's a lot of feats actually for it. Unlike the old heritage feats, bloodline feats don't scale based on the number of feats you have. Also notable, one of those is Ellen, which was actually a race beforehand.
Yeah.
The other one is Foulborn, which is actually new to 4th edition. They're basically far realm corrupted things. Hence the tentacle with eyes wrapped around him.
That's just a spaghetti monster. It's
Yep.
fine.
All right, and the back of the book. This is the amount of playing around with the system and experimentation that should have happened in the Player's Handbook too, honestly, or maybe even the base book. They are starting to dip their toes into different mechanics with this book, but it's not some radical change or variance that breaks too far from the monoclass. It does, however, help highlight some issues with the base system and how it does things different. With how this book specifically does things different. A lack of non-standard action powers, the inflexible encounter powers, not helped by the format of the of attack for damage plus rider, which has the potential of giving you 1 less power for that encounter if the damage and/or rider is something the monsters are immune to. It's basically the inflexibility of the system is kind of inherent when you start seeing something that's actually flexible. But yeah, honestly. This is I think 4th edition would have had longer legs if they were just a little bit less cautious and more willing to experiment with things.
If they started here and branched out from this point.
Yeah. Because I do want to see where it could go if they actually like broke from the model more and more over time. And granted, next week we'll see them breaking from the model even more so, but
Next week.
next week is essential.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, remember 3-5? Do you want us to be a fighter that hits things?
I remember.
Congratulations. 3-5 fighters back, baby.
Yeah. I don't want to have to think.
Oh, too bad.
Aw.
But yeah, we'll get to that when we get to next week. Still anyone else have any thoughts?
I think I've kind of expressed it mostly as we've kind of gone through. I do like the implementation of psionics in 4th ed for the most part. I think it remains in line with psionics as they originated in second ed. While
As
still
much as you could in fourth ed anyways.
while still meshing with the homogenized version of everything we get in fourth ed. And like I think just by the fact that like again psionics at least in second ed were very much their own pretty unique thing, even as much as you might have said they do a lot of effects did emulate spells that existed. There was plenty of stuff that didn't, and plenty of stuff that was way out of fucking left field in there. So I feel like the thing that like just by trying to preserve any of that into fourth ed, they somewhat broke the homogeneity of it is really notable, just because psionics has always been really kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Also, God, why does hybrid suck as much as it does? Like, come on, dude. Like, let people play your fucking game.
Well, they can, but they have to be one of these monoclasses.
They can. They can be one of these monoclasses or two bad versions of these monoclasses.
All right, so I think that about does it for our discussion here of our player options 2, which was really PHP 3 with one brief dip into psionic power.
Yeah. It should be noted how the first part of player options was several books combined.
Yeah.
This was just Player's Handbook 3.
All right, have a good one, everyone.